evening and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues, a conversation of ideas. This week has seen a series of crucial developments which could substantially impact geopolitical equations in the subcontinent. The US bombing in Afghanistan, Pakistan sentencing an Indian citizen to death, and the lowest ever turnout in elections in Jammu and Kashmir amid a spiral of violence. What next? Where do we go from here? To discuss more on this, joining me is the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Farooq Abdullah. He is also a candidate from the Srinagar by-election. Also with me, Shashi Tharoor of the Congress, also has been a UN diplomat for decades. Vikramaditya Singh of the PDP in Jammu and Kashmir. His grandfather, interestingly, signed the instrument of accession of Jammu and Kashmir to India. Also General Syed Atta Hasnain, former Corps Commander of the Srinagar-based 15th Corps, now with Vivekanand Foundation. Also with me, Hardeep Puri, India's former permanent representative to the UN. He's also now with the BJP. Dr. Abdullah, the implications of those dramatic developments I talked about this week, specifically on Jammu and Kashmir, and the significance of what we saw, the depressing events really, of the dismal turnout in Srinagar where you're a candidate.
Well, obviously, had the centre listened to the advice of the interlocutors, then the parliamentary committee that went, probably this would not have been the result. You see, unless we bring everybody to the table, irrespective of which party they are, and listen to their grievances, listen to them, we may not be able to do everything they ask for, but it will be a movement forward. Then the young, who have no future, who see no future under the present situation, need a new outlet. Now, that outlet means we find situation of talking to them. Now, this was one of the recommendations that the parliamentary committee made 2 years ago, that we should talk to these young people. Nothing happened. Now, therefore, we have to start somewhere.
But Dr. Abdullah, are you talking more today as a political candidate? I mean, some of your statements in the recent weeks,
No, it's not a political candidate.
So I was just going to say, as a senior leader, the fact that you said, you know, stone-pelters are also nationalists, they're also fighting for the nation. Today you said that stone-pelters are often government paid. Are these statements that inflame the situation rather than settle it?
It's not only me. In 2010, Advaniji made a statement saying that the stone-pelters are Mufti Saab's creation. So I'm not the one who's saying only this. Not all stone-pelters are government people. They have grievances, but some are, who've been funded.
I'm going to bring in Vikramaditya Singh on that from the PDP. Vikramaditya, stone-pelters, because really it seems to have now become about, when we talk about talk to other political parties, who are these young men? Are they leaderless? Why is it that when we just saw a few years ago, we would celebrate the queues and the high turnouts in Jammu and Kashmir, whether it was Panchayat elections, whether it was Lok Sabha elections? We've come to this situation today, and the fact that the sudden rise of the stone-pelter phenomenon has acquired a new overtone nowadays.
Sonia, it's very unfortunate what's been happening in Kashmir. We've seen the recent events. They're very, very disturbing. The increasing number of young stone-pelters, some of them faceless, is just growing. There used to be a time when a normal political process could happen. You saw a large number of voter turnout. Today, there's a whole new generation of youngsters, and I would say second generation of youngsters who has seen a very, very disturbed Kashmir. When I was growing up in Kashmir, we used to drive up to Gulmarg to have coffee, come back, go to Dal Lake for the evening shikara rides. There was a very healthy mix of people at that time. The real essence of Kashmiriyat was very much alive. Now 2 generations have passed where they have only seen militancy and bloodshed and pain and misery. I think a lot of this is as a result of that. A lot of this is as a result of, like what Dr. Saab was very rightly saying, the failure on the part of the centre to hold effective dialogue. I mean, just look at it. There are, starting from the Gajendra Garkar Commission 1967 to the Sikri Commission 79, Wazir Commission in 84, roundtable series under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, interlocutors report, all party delegations. None of this has been tabled in the parliament. Why don't we take measures on this? All the answers to the questions that you're asking are in there.
But in fact, also that when this coalition is formed, the interesting coalition of opposites, PDP and BJP, that was one of the agendas, that there would be an interlocutor. So why has the PDP not pushed more with the centre to actually get this done?
We are working on it. We are working on it. We are committed to the our agenda, and a lot of issues are there that are being dealt with. Some of them are taking a little longer than the others. We've also had a series of very unfortunate incidents right from the time that the government has taken over. So one has not really had the time to put it in the public sphere and discuss all of these measures, because it's been one crisis management to the other crisis management. So all of the issues that are mentioned in the agenda of alliance are very much in the making.
General Hasnain, I mean, often when you look at it now, it's often reported somehow as in that the government or the political leadership has an agenda which can often be different from a security forces agenda. Maybe agenda is the wrong word, but program or vision perhaps of how to deal with the Kashmir problem. And that's where the problem actually lies. So for instance, why Dr. Abdullah may make the point is that L.K. Advani also said, last stone-pelters created by the government of the day, are they nationalists, are they fighting for a just cause? Security forces have to get their job done. And that's why we've seen the videos that are emerging of CRPF Jawans being kicked and heckled, young men coming and targeting Jawans, which creates a reaction. I mean, in the rest of India, there's a domestic constituency which is against any leniency or talking to protesters, saying treat them like criminals. Where does the reality actually lie as a general?
So the point still remains, security forces are government. Security forces are not outside the government sphere. They work as a part of the government. And right through these last 27, 28 years, you've seen that in bits and pieces how the army in particular has worked over time to bring the situation to a degree of control at different junctures. It happened in 96, that's how the elections took place, and Dr. Abdullah got elected in 96. It happened once again in 99, but once again Kargil set us back. It happened in 2007. We brought it again in 2011, but I think what has been missing each time is the political initiatives as already brought out by representatives from the political parties here. What I would like to contribute here is that there is a thing called the Unified Command, set up in Dr. Abdullah's time, when he was the Chief Minister, in fact, himself. And the concept of the Unified Command is where all stakeholders come together, discuss these issues, and see how this conflict or this internal proxy conflict, how does it have to pan out, what are our responses going to be. I don't think we have had a unified effort, a sufficiently unified effort towards this end at all. The Unified Command is a great institution. The two corps commanders of 15 and 16 corps are supposed to be the advisors, security advisors to the Chief Minister. But you will hardly ever find that in the Unified Command you are looking at an end spectrum. You are looking at the end of the whole game. You are only looking at momentary things like working through the winter strategy or the summer strategy and working out small-time deployments of the police, etc. But the larger picture, or the understanding of the larger picture by all stakeholders, that is hardly ever concentrated upon.
But though, in fact, though the centre and when the new government had come in, there was a focus that there would be a different J&K policy, and the PDP, BJP coming together was seen as perhaps looking at how business would no longer be as usual. You said that security forces represent the government, but is there a mistrust between, say, the Kashmiri political parties and the security forces, which often plays out in some of the mismatch of the signals on the ground? And do you think what we're seeing right now in Kashmir is the same continuation of what we've seen over the last few years, or is there a significant change?
You see, as far as the BJP, PDP combine is concerned, there is no doubt that this particular government has not had time. Frankly, the moment they came to power, within 3 months, you found Burhan Wani killing taking place, and the next 5 months was virtual curfew all over the valley. Thereafter, the winter came, and we've had a very severe winter in Kashmir this year. I think a lot could have been done, but possibly energy was lacking at that time, and we were still recovering from the effects of what happened during the summer last year. Then, of course, immediately in the month of March started a second round of stone throwing and interference and intervention in the operations of the army and the security forces at the encounter sites, etc., which was again primarily as a strategy to put off the entire process of trying to reach out to the people.
But when Dr. Saab says stone-pelters are nationalists, how would you react to that? Or how would you say a security force or an army major in the valley say?
Dr. Abdullah, I also know why he has said so at this particular juncture. Possibly Dr. Abdullah may change his mind subsequently later. I have been watching stone throwers from the day one. In fact, if you ask me, the stone throwing started from my headquarters at Baramulla in 2008. Right there it started. And I've seen stone throwing over a period of time. It started with professional stone throwers, of those who were drug addicts primarily. Many of these rediwalas in Baramulla who were compensated 300 rupees a day to come and throw stones instead of pushing a ready in which they were earning 150 rupees a day. So they were professional stone throwers. Even today, let me tell you, this has been developed into a fine art. You will never find stone throwers in Baramulla who are from Baramulla. They will be all from Patan. The stones are also imported from Sopore. It's a huge process. What I want to, as a bottom line, what I want to emphasize on is that the whole issue of street protests today has reached a level of professional management. And the separatists have got their organizations and infrastructure right down to the tehsil and the block level, where there are rabble-rousers, there's elements of the clergy, there are stone throwers, there are their own intelligence people. The combination of all this is very lethal and has come to a level where almost you can say it's even better than some of the security forces.
No, and if we're not unified, how would we combat that? I'm going to come back to you on that, Dr. Abdullah. Just to bring in Ms. Puri, we've been talking specifically about what's happening in the valley in the context of stone pelters, in the context of political equations, but looking at from the larger subcontinent, the geopolitical aspect of that as well. With Pakistan's provocation this week, a surprise provocation of sentencing an Indian citizen to death, with the fact that the dialogue process has been stalled for now for a while because of the lack of response, and the fact that with the domestic constituency also in India that sees no reason for us to talk at all. Where are we positioned in terms of Pakistan at the moment, and how crucial is that when we look at Jammu and Kashmir, and of course the US bombing in Afghanistan as well now?
Before I come to the India-Pakistan bilateral dimension, I just want to come in very briefly on some of the points made earlier. First, I don't think the government and the security forces can have two separate agendas. In fact, the security forces are the security forces of the state. So there's no issue on that. And I've never heard any suggestion that the use of force or any other action by the security forces was an autonomous action which did not enjoy the clearance of the state.
Having said, the Boran Wali, I have to say, was one example where there were lots of conflicting signals, sadly, which went out.
Sadly, but let me come to the overall picture and I come back to specifics. Number two, the state cannot abdicate its responsibility. I mean, the state by definition is vested with the responsibility for security and law and order. Now, the unified effort which Atta is speaking about, which I wholeheartedly support, but before we make that unified effort, I think all stakeholders, including in the political class, have to be on the same page. Now, Farooq Saab, Dr. Saab makes a very valid point that you need to also speak to the so-called stone pelters. Now, I have a little difficulty with the definition. What is a stone pelter? I don't think these are innocent children who are motivated. These are, I think, misguided elements. And I think apart from lack of parental control, there is some other motivation which is leading them to burn down police stations, which is leading them to do stone pelting, etc. Now, if you have to use the margin of persuasion, which any state necessarily has to, the question arises, whom do you reach out to use that margin of persuasion? So I personally believe...
You don't think the Hurriyat represents that anymore?
I'm just coming to that. I personally believe, I'm a very proud member of the BJP, but I speak here as a, with deep, with anguished introspection as a citizen of India. What would any state system do? You need to reach out, you need to use the margin of persuasion, but you don't need to fall into the hands of a neighboring country which foments this kind of discontent in order to be able to keep you on edge all the time. And I'm coming to Pakistan in a minute. I think there are two separate issues. One is the domestic management of the situation inside our own country. And I believe that Dr. Saab, Atta, and my other colleague, what they say is absolutely correct. We have no choice but to use the margin of persuasion, reach out through a unified effort, through a concerted effort, and see whether these new misguided miscreants have someone who can inspire them and get that change of heart there. That we have to do. But at the same time, we have to deal with a new situation which is of the making, which is that our neighboring, the Western neighbor, I think the policy that they have been adopting is becoming, for a number of reasons, Perhaps they think that they can leverage their situation as a frontline state because of what's happening in the region and get away with it. But I see a calibrated escalation in what they are doing. Now we have to deal with that as well. I don't see any prospects, nor would I advocate a prospects for dialogue with Pakistan in terms of the restoration of the previous comprehensive or any form of dialogue. We need to keep our lines open with Pakistan. That's very different from a dialogue.
Just to ask Shashi Tharoor, linking perhaps what, as a Lok Sabha MP, and I'm sure somebody who knows Kashmir well, it saddens when you see voting booths with no voters, when you see security personnel outnumbering voters who are actually coming, in contrast with, as I said, long lines in Srinagar, which are celebrated as international headlines just a few years ago. In the same week, we see what happened with Pakistan and this KULBHUSHAN JADHAV sentence. We see a US bombing in Afghanistan. Where should India position itself in three different aspects in a way, but all interlinked?
Well, they are interlinked, and I'm not sure that it's easy to have a coherent position. First of all, we do need, obviously, to address the domestic unrest for what it is, because these are, for the most part, people who are our citizens and who, for good reason or bad, have been alienated from our country and our system. Having said that, it's very clear that there is a foreign hand involved in these disturbances, both directly sending people across in order to unleash violence and mayhem, and also, it seems, offering support, finance, and other kinds of encouragement to misbehavior by some of our own people. Separating these two is difficult, but the complete absence of any meaningful progress towards the first part, that is, towards a dialogue with those who give, if you like, moral and political cover to the secessionists, that absence of dialogue has come back to hurt us today. I'm referring to the internal situation. Now, when it comes to Pakistan, however, dialogue is much more problematic, because our elected civilian government can only talk to their elected civilian government, but their elected civilian government doesn't call the shots when it comes to us, or specifically when it comes to Kashmir. The decisions are being made elsewhere, and they're being made by a military which has its own very specific agenda. We can't sort of directly talk to them. We have suggested in the past military-to-military talks. Those have been spurned by their military. So we are essentially spending our diplomatic energies talking to a civilian government that is neither willing nor able to do anything about the central problems we want to talk about. So why bother to talk with them? We have to keep a certain diplomatic relationship going, but let's not have too many illusions that we're accomplishing very much with that. And then finally, of course, the persistence of violence, the continued snubbing of India's serious efforts at dialogue, and Mr. Modi has made several, doesn't exactly encourage us to believe that there is much to be gained by dialogue. Certainly dialogue, while they're sending people across to attack your bases, is not particularly sensible. And then dialogue in the face of a brazen decision or to announce the execution or the impending execution of an Indian citizen on unspecified charges of terrorism, none of which have been substantiated, is a flagrant provocation that can only call for a negative reaction from our side, not for any sort of conciliatory reaction. So we are in a bit of a dilemma. We can't do much with Pakistan, whereas they are continuing to needle us through unrest in Kashmir, and we're not doing enough about Kashmir.